We here at Venafi are super excited about how the future of machine identity management is shaping up. Now, core to this future is what I call the rise of the security-minded developer who are now relying on things like coding and automation to manage and protect machine identities, because these machine identities help establish and maintain trust within new, complex, and dynamic architectures. While there are many desirable aspects of this rise of the modern security-minded developer, there is one pronounced undesirable side effect. Security teams and development teams are now becoming two distant islands, and we need to be able to bridge those islands and bring them closer to each other. Developers want autonomy, security wants control. Developers want things like freedom of choice. Security wants consistency. Bridging this gap between development and security is the need of the hour. And how cool would it be if bridging this gap was as easy as writing one line of code? Now think about how Google Analytics works. One line of code, and lo and behold, your website has analytics set up for observability. Now, what I'd like to do is today take you all on a short journey into the future to see what the world could look like in the future for machine identity management. Now, we begin our story by visualizing a day in the life of a security-minded developer, somebody we've spoken about a minute ago. They know just enough about many important aspects of security to be able to build security into their architecture. Now, their architecture includes components that bring business logic, and there's a ton of configuration and declarative programming that is a part of their architectures. What this configuration and declarative programming lets them do is it lets them externalize non-business logic tasks like configuring logging, configuring access control, maybe configuring policies, but all of that outside of the application. This is a very applicable design pattern for configuring machine identities as well. Now, the developer in our story is targeting a cloud environment for deploying a new super high performance service for, let's say, processing transactions, and maybe they're working on a critical application like PayPal or a Venmo. Now, they built the service, the high performance service, and they're configuring the deployment of that service into production. What they end up doing is something as simple as stating the characteristics of the machine identity that they need for that application, for that service, and stating the URL of the Venafi Control Plane for control, consistency, and observability. Also remember that this is a high-performance service. So the idea here is that each instance of the service that comes up, it dynamically gets the right kind of machine identity as it is described in the configuration file. This configuration file accompanies the code that goes into production. So you can see here that the full stack developer has inserted a configuration for Venafi in their Terraform configuration. And this configuration is going to be used to deploy the service into a staging environment like production. The configuration is simple. It just says that this service, when instantiated, needs an ultra low duration, single use TLS machine identity that is enterprise trusted because the service is going into production. The configuration also specifies that the control plane for providing the reliability, the observability, and the consistency that the security team needs is available on a particular URL.
All right then, looks like the configuration is done. The code and its configurations both are committed to the repository, and they go through multiple automated gates before the service is ready to be pushed to production in a few minutes. Looks like all the automated gates have cleared, and the new high-performance transaction service is being pushed into production, and the target availability zone for this service is set to Central America. As service instances are created, they become available for use. From a machine identity management point of view, it is critical that these machine identities associated with the service instances are observable. Since the developer had already configured the service to the Venafi control plane, the machine identities associated with each of these service instances starts popping up on the map. And once they're in the control plane, you can control the actions you take on these identities. We should talk about what happened behind the scenes for a minute as well. Since the Venafi control plane was configured for the service, the CI/CD integrations behind the scenes invoked the control plane to issue an ultra-low time to live, one-time use machine identity from a local but trusted high-speed issuer in the VPC where the service instances were targeted for deployment. These identities are issued in nanoseconds and they only last for a single transaction. As this service gets mainstream usage, you start to visualize the ultra high-speed issuance that tracks with the number of transactions each service is committing. Each transaction can now be identified and protected by a machine identity. Now consider that another service with similar requirements is deployed through the same process that we walked through, but using GitLab. Notice, in this case, the machine identity is not configured for single use. Instead, it is configured to use the default policy, clearly not compliant with the intended behavior for the service. As soon as that machine identity gets issued and is provisioned, an anomaly is flagged. There are other anomalies that start popping up as other non-compliant services come online. What is critical is that either these services be taken down or they be issued with new compliant machine identities as soon as possible so that the application can continue to work in compliance. Now, the developer gets a notification in Slack on the outage channel as soon as these anomalies are flagged in the control plane. They log into the control plane to troubleshoot. They zero in on the anomaly they want to remediate. Since the control plane has visibility into the entire application and its services, the developer can perform some quick diagnostics and assess which service in the transaction flow is at the risk of an outage or breach. The developer uses the control plane to get a configuration snippet that is compliant with the overall policy. They copy the snippet into the service configuration and submit the configuration back to the CI/CD pipeline. Soon after, automation kicks in and a new service update is pushed to production, and the service is now fully compliant with the ultra-low time to live, single-use, enterprise trusted identity policy for the transaction service. Now let's take a step back. This was just one service, one developer. Your enterprise has hundreds, if not thousands of services, dozens, if not hundreds or thousands of developers. Imagine this at scale. You as the security team are now defining policies and providing dynamic machine identity infrastructure like local, trusted, ultra high-speed issuers globally. You have the consistency, observability, and reliability you need. At the same time, you're not in the developer's critical path to push to production. You as the developer now no longer need to worry about an Excel sheet full of controls that you have to implement and other intrusive controls that prevent you from pushing code out when you need to. Your contract with the machine identity management team is simple. It is a single line in a configuration file. The control plane integrates with the CI/CD pipeline and automates the rest. The control plane provides services like managed, ultra-fast, trusted local issuers to help you meet your need for speed on your deployed services. And finally, the control plane is always in sync with the actual identities that are provisioned. The control plane provides the controls to operate on these identities, and it is where you go for diagnostics and remediation. That is a part of the future that we're imagining and building for our customers. The Venafi Control Plane provides your security team the observability, the consistency, and the reliability they need. At the same time, your development teams get the freedom of choice they need to build machine identities in line into their architectures and not an afterthought.
We've unveiled the Venafi Control Plane for machine identities. This control plane unifies machine identity management for data center, hybrid, and edge-based environments. We've announced our ultra-fast issuance capability, and we brought together a reference architecture that helps security teams and development teams collaborate to build robust machine identity management practices. These practices span their hybrid cloud environments.